This videotape program provides the necessary information you'll need to master the operation of the Grass Valley Group Model 110 video switcher. Panel controls and switching techniques are demonstrated in detail. This tape applies to the NTSC and PAL versions of the Model 110 and the component Model 110CV. For simplicity, the term Model 110 is used to describe all models. A separate section on the operating differences of the Model 110CV is included at the end of this program. The Model 110, based on the industry standard Model 100, is one of the most powerful, versatile, and easy-to-operate compact switchers on the market today. Even if you have never operated a television switcher before, this videotape will help you become proficient in the use of the Model 110. If you are a newcomer to video switchers, start at the beginning of this tape and follow it through in sequence to the end. When you finish, you will have been introduced in an easy step-by-step fashion to all of the operations of the Model 110. Experienced video switcher operators may want to skip certain sections of this program and focus on just the specifics of operation. In any case, details about the operation of panel controls and individual push buttons, as well as terminology associated with the switcher, are described in the Model 110 Operator's Handbook, loosely based on the Operator's Handbook. This program is divided into three main sections. A. Introduction to Video Switching. B. Model 110 Panel Controls and Setup Procedures. And C. Operating Procedures. Before we demonstrate the switcher's full power, let's look at the basic effects that the Model 110 can perform. These are used as building blocks to produce more complex effects. The Model 110 accepts standard synchronous video input signals from cameras, video tape recorders, character generators, and other video sources, and allows you to transition from one signal to another. A transition can be an instantaneous cut from one picture to another. It can be a slow mix from one picture into another. Or it can be a wipe, where a geometric pattern such as a circle or vertical line moves across the screen, revealing a new picture as it moves. The switcher can also perform keys, where a part of one picture is inserted into another picture. A key requires three signals: a background, a key source or hole cutter, and a key fill made up of a video signal or a matte signal. If the key fill is the same as the key source, then it is termed a self-key. If an external source supplies the hole cutter, then you have an external key. In the Model 110, both self-keys and external keys are classified as luminance keys, because they are produced using the brightness of a key source. A chroma key provides a hole cutter based on color hue instead of the brightness of a key source. While showing you how to perform keys or any other operations, we'll insert two picture monitors on the screen so that you can watch to see how transitions take place and to get a better idea of the operating logic behind the switcher. The picture on the left represents the look-ahead preview monitor that shows you in advance what the final output of the switcher will look like after the next transition takes place. With this monitor, you can see the effect taking shape as you make the panel selections. This preview function is very useful in live applications. The picture on the right represents the program monitor. This monitor shows you the final output of the switcher, the output that is on air for broadcast applications, or fed to the recording VTR for post-production applications. Now that you have a basic idea of what a switcher can do, let's get into more detail by introducing you to the Model 110 panel controls. The Model 110 control panel is divided into 7 subpanels. They include 1. Primary crosspoint buses, which allow signals to pass to the output of the buses when a push button is selected. 2. Effects transition group, where transitions between video signals and/or effect setups are selected and controlled. 3. Effects Keyer Group, where upstream key effects are selected and controlled. 4. Pattern and eMem Effects Memory Group, where selection and adjustment of wipe patterns occur, or when the eMem push button is enabled. The push buttons become effects memory storage positions, where you can learn and recall specific switcher setups. 5. Matte and Background Group, where the colors of white borders, matte fills, and internal background generators are controlled. 6. Automatic Transition Group, where transition rates are assigned to all of the automatic transition push buttons. And 7. The Downstream Keyer Group, where downstream key effects are selected and controlled. The term downstream means that the keyer inserts keys at the end of the video flow through the system. A downstream keyer lets a key remain on air, while upstream backgrounds and effects keys can be changed behind it. With this brief identification of the control panel, let's continue by making sure that the Model 110 has been set up properly for basic operation. Check to see that the eMem push button is off, that the key on lamp in the effects transition group is off, that the downstream on lamp in the downstream keyer group is off, and that the fade to black push button is off. With the switcher properly set up, we're now ready to proceed with the actual operating procedures of the Model 110. The operating procedures section of this program is divided into 7 subsections: source selection and effects transitions, wipe selection, key effects, downstream keyer functions, using eMem effects memory, editor interface, and operating in component video. The 3 long rows of push buttons at the bottom of the control panel are the primary switcher controls. Pressing a push button on any of the 3 rows, called crosspoint buses, causes the video input signal associated with that push button to be sent to the output of the crosspoint bus. The key bus selects video which can be used as the video fill for an effects key. The program background bus selects on-air background video for keys and effects. And the preset background bus selects background video to be placed on air during the next background transition. Selecting a new input on a bus automatically turns off the previous selection, so that only one crosspoint is on at a time on each bus. The video signals associated with the push buttons come from the cameras, videotape recorders, and other video sources that are connected to the video inputs. All 3 push buttons aligned in any vertical column on the 3 buses share the same video input. The sources available on the Model 110 for this program include internally generated black, videotape 1, videotape 2, camera 1, still store, character generator, DPM 100 digital picture manipulator, and internally generated color background. Controls for color backgrounds are hue, chroma, and luminance, which can be adjusted for color, intensity, and brightness. These controls are shared by 2 other matte generators in the Model 110. The select buttons allow you to choose between white borders and effects, DSK matte, and background. The background and key push buttons in the effects transition group select the mode of the transition panel. Background causes the next transition to take place between video selected on the program background bus and the video selected on the preset background bus. When a background transition is in progress, the program output becomes a mixture of the video signals from the 2 background buses. Key causes the next transition to place an effects key on or off air. Background and key can be selected simultaneously. As each mode is selected, the look-ahead preview shows what the effect looks like before a transition is made. The type of transition is determined by selecting either the cut, mix, or wipe buttons. A direct instantaneous switch between the program source and the preset source occurs when you press the cut push button. To cut to a new background, select a signal on the preset background bus and background in the effects transition group. Notice that the preview monitor shows the preset background signal and the program monitor shows the program background signal. Pressing cut instantaneously switches the signal on the preview monitor to the program on-air monitor. The program source swaps positions and appears on the preset bus. Pressing cut again, the preset bus source will switch back to the program bus. A background cut can also be accomplished by simply selecting a new crosspoint on the program background bus. However, this method does not allow you to preview the new background signal. Now, let's perform a background mix. The mix mode is selected by the mix push button in the effects transition group. This mode allows you to perform a dissolve from one picture to another. Mixes or dissolves are generally used when making a change of time or place within a storyline. The procedure for performing a background mix transition is to first select a new signal on the preset background bus. Now, select background and mix. Remember that the preview monitor shows the preset background signal and the program monitor shows the program background signal. Slowly move the lever arm in the effects transition group from one limit to another to perform a manual transition. Press the Auto Trans push button to perform an automatic transition. The length of the auto transition will depend on the rate displayed in the auto transition rate display. In either transition, the preset background signal dissolves into and eventually replaces the program background signal. At the end of the transition, the sources exchange on the two crosspoint buses, leaving the new source on program. Also notice that the Auto Trans push button lights during an automatic transition and turns off when the transition is completed. The next background transition we'll look at is the wipe. Activating the wipe push button allows you to perform a wipe transition from one scene to another. In general, a wipe transition is used to indicate the passage of time or a change of scene in a storyline. To perform a background wipe transition, select a new source on the preset background bus. Select background and wipe in the effects transition group. Make sure that the EMEM push button is off. Now, select the wipe pattern of your choice from the upper Pattern Control Group panel. A red light in the pattern push button indicates which pattern is selected. If you want to preview the selected wipe, hold down the wipe push button to view the wipe edge on the preview monitor. You may have to adjust the mask preset size control in the lower pattern control group to bring the pattern into view. The wipe preview feature allows you to observe the wipe edge and adjust its characteristics before you perform the on-air transition. When you are through previewing the selected wipe, release the wipe push button. The pattern will disappear from the preview monitor, but the wipe characteristics will still be present in the switcher. Once satisfied with the look of the wipe, you can move the lever arm to the opposite limit, or press Auto Trans to perform the wipe on air. At the end of the wipe, the two sources selected on the background buses will flip-flop. For a split screen effect, simply move the lever arm halfway between limits and pause before completing the transition. You can also do a mix or wipe to preset pattern by setting it up in the effects keyer. We'll demonstrate this technique later on in the videotape. For now, let's look at an in-depth explanation of how to use automatic transitions. If you press Auto Trans once, the transition will proceed just as though you were moving the lever arm. Pressing Auto Trans again while the transition is in progress will pause the transition. Pressing Autotrans a third time causes the transition to be completed. You can also use the lever arm and Autotrans functions together. For example, you can start a slow transition by activating Autotrans and complete it by moving the lever arm faster than the automatic transition. At the point where the lever arm overtakes the automatic transition, the Autotrans function will turn off. Conversely, you can begin a transition with the lever arm and finish it by pressing Autotrans. At the end of the automatic transition, both green arrows by the lever arm will light up and remain lighted until the lever arm is returned to either limit. Automatic transition rates are set in the Auto Transition Rate Group panel. In this area, you can assign transition rates to the auto transition, downstream keyer mix, and fade to black automatic transition push buttons. The rate display shows the currently selected rate in television frames. When the Autotrans, DSK mix, or fade to black function is activated, the proper transition rate LED indicator automatically lights up, and the transition rate for that function is displayed. To check the speed of an automatic transition before performing it on air, press the Select push button on the Autotrans rate control group until the Autotrans LED lights up. The transition rate programmed for the Autotrans push button will then appear in the display. The transition rate is given in television frames. A frame is 1/30th of a second in NTSC, or 1/25th of a second in PAL. To change the transition speed, set a new transition rate in the rate display using the Set push buttons. This stores the rate for the Autotrans push button. The duration of the auto transition can vary between 1 and 999 frames. A display of 0 results in a cut. You can select and adjust white patterns or control EMEM effects memory learns and recalls from the Pattern EMEM subpanel. The EMEM pattern-enabled push button, when lit, activates the use of Learn, Last X, and EMEM register functions. When not lit, it allows wipe reverse, positioning, and pattern selection. The Positioner Last X push button, when lit, activates the joystick, allowing white patterns to be positioned on the screen. When not lit, patterns return to a normal position. Reverse reverses the direction of white pattern movement. It also reverses key mask. Pattern edge border varies the width of the selected pattern border. Pattern edge soft varies the softness of the pattern edge or border. Aspect on enables the aspect control so that you can adjust the height to width ratio of all white patterns. Aspect off returns the wipe to its normal aspect. Mask preset size adjusts the size of the patterns in wipe preview, key mask, and preset pattern modes. In most post-production applications, it is more convenient to adjust wipes by positioning the lever arm between the limits while looking at the program output. If you want to change a wipe in a live situation, hold the wipe push button down and adjust mask preset size so that the wipe edge is clearly visible. This will not affect your program output. To set the width of the border on the wipe pattern edge, adjust the border control. Set the softness of the border or pattern edge by using the soft control. Adjust the color saturation and brightness of the border by using the hue, chroma, and luminance knobs in the matte background control group. All three conditions are automatically delegated to control the pattern border when the white push button is pressed. If you want to adjust a pattern shape, press the Aspect On push button and adjust the aspect control. This allows you to change the angle of the diagonal white pattern or the height to width ratio of the other white patterns. With the wipe push button still held down, select the Positioner Last X button and move the joystick to position the pattern anywhere on the screen. Pattern movement is proportional to how far and how fast you move the joystick from its center. When the joystick is released, the pattern will remain in position, and an on-air wipe transition will start from wherever the pattern is placed. Several new wipes can be created by positioning certain patterns like the square or diamond partway off the screen. Turning off the positioner function causes the pattern to return to the center of the screen. Turning the positioner back on again will return the pattern to the position that was previously assigned. Use the reverse push button to select wipe direction. Normally, the white areas of the pattern symbols on the panel indicate where new video will be revealed as you perform the wipe. Selecting reverse before performing the wipe will reverse the direction of pattern movement so that the black areas of the pattern symbols will represent new video. If you prefer, you can have the pattern move in one direction as the scene is wiped on air. And then, after selecting reverse, have the pattern move in the opposite direction to wipe the scene off air. When you're satisfied with the appearance, position, and direction of the wipe, you can release the wipe push button and perform the effect on air. In the effects keyer, there are 4 possible key sources: preset pattern, key bus, effects external, and chroma key. The matte fill push button, when lit, selects the effects matte to fill the keyhole. When not lit, the video fill comes from the key bus. Key mask allows use of white patterns adjusted by mask preset size control to cover portions of a key. Key invert changes the polarity of a key signal, useful when keying from dark letters or graphics on a light background. Clip adjusts the level at which a key switches from background video to fill video. Gain adjusts the edge of a key from hard to soft. In the chroma key mode, chroma key hue lets you choose the color from which a chroma key will be produced. A key memory feature is also built into the keyer that recalls the last clip and gain control settings used by each key source. The effects key mode is activated by the key push button in the effects transition control group. 3 types of keys can be performed using the effects keyer: luminance keys, preset pattern keys, and chroma keys. A luminance key is one in which the luminance or brightness of one video picture is used to cut holes in another picture. A preset pattern key is a key in which a white pattern, set to a preset size, is used to cut the hole. A chroma key is a key in which one color of a scene is removed, and the area where the color occurred is replaced with an entirely different scene. Let's learn how to perform keys using the Model 110. First, the luminance key. 3 signals must be selected to create a luminance key: a background source, a key source, and a fill source. The background is either selected on the program background and/or a new source on the preset background bus. The key source cuts a hole in the background scene. 2 possible luminance key sources can be selected on the effects keyer: either the output of the key bus or a separate external signal. An external key can be any signal you connect to the external key input, such as a graphics camera, character generator, or key source videotape. If you select the key bus as your key source, the hole cutter is selected on the key bus crosspoint. It can only be filled with itself, or matte filled when the matte fill push button is lit. If you select Effects External to cut the hole, your key fill can be any crosspoint on the key bus or matte filled. In order to understand how to take full advantage of the effects keyer, you should experiment with each key source, background, and fill. So let's practice what we've just seen before we look at the other types of keys available on the Model 110. Let's begin by selecting Key. Now, select Key Bus as the key source. and select the desired video crosspoint in the yellow key bus push button row. Watch the preview monitor and adjust the key for the best effect. Adjust the clip and gain controls for the desired key appearance. Gain varies the luminance key from a linear or unity-gained soft-edged appearance when the knob is fully counterclockwise to a high-gained hard-edged effect when the gain knob is moved clockwise. Clip determines the level of source video brightness used to cut the keyhole, and the control can be varied anywhere from black to white. If you want to control a specific area in which a key appears, select Key Mask on the effects keyer and select a white pattern. A mask can then be created from any white pattern using the pattern controls. The mask inhibits the key wherever the white pattern appears so that only unmasked areas of the key signal will be able to cut the hole. Note that if you select a wipe when Key Mask is also selected, the same white pattern that is used for the mask is also used for the wipe transition. Be careful not to change any of the pattern control settings when previewing the wipe edge, as this will also change the characteristics of the mask. Now, let's transition our key. Whenever a key is partially or fully on air, the key on indicator lights up. This reminds you that an effects key is on air. Once the key is on air, you can change backgrounds without removing the key by selecting the background push button in the effects transition group and a new background on the preset background bus. Then make the on-air transition. To take a key off air, select Key again and press Cut, Auto Trans, or move the lever arm to the opposite limit. This will remove the key, but leaves the same background on air because only a key transition was selected. If you want to change backgrounds at the same time that the key is removed, you must select both background and key simultaneously before doing the transition. The second type of key available in the Model 110 effects keyer is Preset Pattern. Preset Pattern enables you to perform a transition to a split screen effect. The procedure for setting up this effect and taking it to air is the same as that for a luminance key, except that Preset Pattern is selected as the source and a key bus crosspoint is selected as the fill. Let's demonstrate. First, select Key in the Effects Transition group. The background push button should be off. Select Preset Pattern as the source and Key Bus as the fill, which is normally different from the one selected on the program background bus. The selected signal will constitute one part of the split screen, and the signal already on air on the program background bus will constitute the other part. Now, select the desired white pattern. Watch the preview monitor and adjust the pattern controls for the desired pattern size, position, aspect, and edge. Normally, the key bus scene will appear in that part of the screen corresponding to the white areas of the pattern symbols on the panel. If you want key bus video to appear in the black areas, select Reverse in the upper Pattern EMEM group. We're now ready to take the effect to air. Select Mix or Wipe and move the lever arm to the opposite limit. The preset pattern will transition into the on-air background video. Obviously, we could have also used either an auto trans or a cut instead of the lever arm to transition the effect. Once the preset pattern is on air, you can change backgrounds while leaving the pattern in place. To do this, select Background in the Effects Transition group. Select the new background on the preset background bus and perform the transition. You can also remove a preset pattern, either the pattern alone or both the pattern and the background. To remove the pattern alone, select Key and perform the transition. To remove both the background and the pattern, simultaneously select Key and Background. Then select a new background on the preset background bus and perform the transition. Sometimes you may find it valuable to highlight a particular area of a scene. The spotlight effect meets this need. It allows you to use a preset white pattern to highlight an area inside the pattern while the area outside the pattern is shaded over. The spotlight effect is easy to create. Select Preset Pattern as the key source. Start with a background scene that you want to highlight on air using the program background bus. Select the same scene on the key bus and select black on the preset background bus. Now select background and key simultaneously in the effects transition group. Both push buttons will light. Go ahead and select the desired white pattern. The circle is most commonly used, and adjust the pattern size using the Mask Preset Size control. Use the joystick to position it over the area of the background to be highlighted. You can also soften the edge slightly using the Soft control, or give it a border using the Border control. To take the spotlight effect to air, select Mix and move the lever arm approximately to mid-travel. To remove the spotlight but leave the background on air, bring the lever arm back to the starting limit, opposite the illuminated green arrow. Now let's continue by looking at the third and last type of key possible using the Model 110 chroma keys. The chroma key push button on the effects keyer selects the chroma key mode if the chroma keyer is installed in the switcher. Chroma keys differ from luminance keys in that a hole is cut in the chroma key scene on the basis of color, not on the basis of signal brightness. For example, if blue is the chroma key color, the blue areas of the chroma key scene are removed and replaced with video from the program background bus. Typically, chroma keys are used to place a new background behind the person who is standing in a studio, giving the illusion that the person is standing in front of the new background. Before we show you how to perform a chroma key on the Model 110, it might be a good idea to review elements that make up a good chroma key setup. First, the hue of the chroma key backing used in your set is important. Select a backing color which will not be present in the foreground object. You can use standard blue paint applied to a backdrop, but be certain that it's a deep, highly saturated, medium bright color which is flat, not glossy. Second, most chroma key problems are caused by poor lighting. Lighting for the backing and foreground should be done separately. The foreground object should not cast a shadow on the backing. Instead, the backing should be well lighted and uniform. The foreground object should also be well lighted. Provide backlighting to give good definition between foreground and backing. Finally, the foreground object should be placed far enough away from the backing so that no backing color is reflected onto the foreground. If reflections do occur, use a yellow filter on the backlighting to reduce this problem. With these tips to guide you and a bit of practice, you'll be able to produce good quality chroma keys using your Model 110. The Model 110 chroma keyer will accept either RGB or Y, R-Y, B-Y component video as a keying source. Let's create a chroma key using an RGB camera signal. Place an object or person free of blue or green in the foreground of a solid blue or green-backed chroma key set. Other colors can be used for the backing, but blue or green is suggested because these colors work best when people are part of the chroma key scene. For this example, a camera with the appropriate outputs is focused on a chroma key scene. Any video source with suitable component outputs can be used for chroma keying, but it is usually a camera. Now, select background and key simultaneously in the effects transition control group. Choose chroma key as the key source. Select the chroma key camera on the key bus. Choose color background on the preset background bus. And set the color to gray by reducing the chroma to 0. This is accomplished by turning the chroma background knob in a fully counterclockwise direction and setting the luminance control to midpoint. Look at the preview monitor. The gray-colored background makes it easier to see the key edges when adjusting the key. Now, set the clip and gain controls to their middle positions. Adjust the hue control so the key color, blue in this example, is replaced by the background color gray. Now you can adjust the hue, clip, and gain until the best overall key is produced. This usually takes some practice and may require lighting changes in the scene for best results. When the key is set, select the new background on the preset background bus and take the chroma key to air with an appropriate transition. Once the key is on air, you have the ability to change backgrounds behind the foreground by selecting a new background on the preset background bus. Selecting background in the effects transition group and transitioning to the new background on air. When the chroma key option is not installed in the Model 110, an optional chroma key bypass board allows the chroma key blue input to be converted into a second effects external key source. With this option installed, the chroma key push button selects an external key input in the same manner as the effects external push button. New push button caps are provided to indicate the bypass board is installed. Another option of interest is the Key-Link interface feature of the Model 110. If you have a Grass Valley Group digital picture manipulator, the DPM series, you can use the DPM and the Key-Link interface to fly a chroma key or an external effects key. With the DPM connected to the Model 110 through the Key-Link interface, you can activate Key-Link by holding down the chroma key or the effects external push button and simultaneously selecting the DPM input on the key bus. The selected cross point on the key bus will flash, indicating the Key-Link is active. The Key-Link mode can also be selected from the DPM or via editor control. Now you can set up the key on the effects keyer of the Model 110 as you normally would, and then use the DPM to manipulate the key and fill together over the program background. To turn the Key-Link mode off, select a different key bus push button or press any source push button in the effects keyer. The downstream keyer group, or DSK, is where you can select and control downstream key effects. Source push buttons select video signals used to cut the keyhole. Fill push buttons select the video signal used to fill the keyhole. Borderline, drop shadow, and outline produce a border, shadow, or matte-filled outline around the key if the borderline option is installed. Downstream key preview causes the key to appear on the preview monitor. It turns off when the key is cut or mixed on air, when the output is faded to black, or when effects transition push buttons are pressed. Key mask allows use of a white pattern that is adjusted by mask preset size control to cover portions of a key. Key invert inverts the polarity of a key signal. Clip adjusts the amount of fill video that appears over the background. Gain adjusts the sharpness of a key. DSK cut and DSK mix cut or mix a key on or off the air. DSK mix rate is set using the auto transition rate control group. Fade to black initiates an on-air fade to black or a fade up from black at a rate set by the auto transition rate control group. As far as operation, the downstream keyer performs very much like the effects keyer. The advantage of the DSK is that you can set up a complete video picture with a key effect on the effects keyer, and then place a caption over the whole scene with the DSK. There is no chroma key function on the DSK, so all keys performed on it are luminance keys. Let's go through the procedure for inserting a downstream key into the final output of the switcher. First, select DSK Preview. This allows you to view the downstream key effect on the preview monitor just as it will appear in the on-air output. Next, select a key source on the downstream keyer to cut the keyhole. DSK External selects the key signal applied to the DSK External key source input, which is typically the key output of a character generator. Key Bus selects the output of the effects key bus. If you select the key bus as your key source, the hole cutter is selected on the key bus crosspoint. It can only be filled with external video or DSK mat. If you select DSK external to cut the hole, your key fill can be external video or DSK mat. If DSK mat is selected, adjust the hue, chroma, and the luminance controls in the matte background control group for the desired fill video color. These controls are automatically delegated to the DSK mat generator when the DSK mat push button on the downstream keyer is pressed. If you want to match the color of DSK mat to the color of effects mat or color background matte copy, hold down the matte fill push button on the effects keyer or the color background push button on one of the crosspoint buses. Then press the DSK mat push button on the downstream keyer. Adjust the DSK clip and gain controls for the best key. If you are keying from a character generator with anti-aliased fonts, set the gain control to minimum to achieve a linear key with no jagged edges on the characters. If the selected source consists of dark letters or graphics on a light background, also select Key Invert for the best effect. The automatic key memory feature of the Model 110 also applies to DSK applications. As with the effects keyer, you can mask off areas of the key so that no keyhole will be cut in that area of the background. If you want to do this, select Key Mask. Select a white pattern and adjust the pattern controls to mask the key with the pattern. You can place the downstream key on air by pressing either the DSK Cut or DSK Mix push button on the downstream keyer. The key will cut or mix on air over the existing on-air output of the switcher, and the DSK on lamp will light to indicate that that key is on air. To remove the key, press DSK Cut or DSK Mix again. You can even press DSK Mix before the key is fully on air, and it will immediately reverse and come off air. The DSK mix rate is set with the auto transition rate controls. If you want to preview and reset the mix rate before taking the key back to air, select the DSK mix function in the auto transition rate control group and set the new rate in the display. Now, when you press DSK mix, the mix will occur at the new rate. Note that the DSK preview turns off automatically when the key is placed on air or if the output is faded to black. It's also turned off automatically if you press Background, Key, Mix, or Wipe in the Effects Transition Control Group. If the linear borderline option is installed in your switcher, the borderline push button on the downstream keyer activates a black or white border, which is placed around the downstream key edge. The drop shadow push button in this group activates a black, two-line transparent, or white border. You can change border color by pressing the borderline or drop shadow push button repeatedly. The outline push button turns the key into a thin, matte-filled line whose shape follows the edges of the key source. In the external video mode, only the drop shadow function will operate. When either borderline or outline is selected, DSK Matte is automatically selected as the key fill. To turn off the enhanced modes, external video or DSK Matte must be pressed. To fade the on-air output of the switcher to black, press the Fade to Black push button on the downstream keyer. To fade up from black, even if the output is currently fading to black, press Fade to Black again. Notice that when the output is faded fully to black, the lamps on all the crosspoint buses go to low tally, indicating that the outputs from those buses are not currently on air. The preview monitor shows what the on-air output will look like when the switcher is faded up from black. The rate at which the fade occurs can be previewed and set to a new value using the auto transition rate controls. To do this, press the Select push button in the Auto Transition Rate control group until the Fade to Black LED lights up. The fade rate for the fade to black push button will then appear in the display. To change this rate, press the set push buttons repeatedly until the desired digits appear in the display. Holding down one of the push buttons will cause the corresponding digit to return to 0. A fade to black can also be performed by selecting black on the preset background bus and mixing to it. However, since this black fade occurs upstream of the downstream keyer, any downstream key that is on air will not be faded to black and will appear over the black video. EMEM Effects Memory consists of 16 internal memory locations or storage registers, 10 of which can be accessed from the control panel to save or learn a particular control panel setup. You can then recall that same panel setup at a later time. This is useful whenever you need to perform the same switcher effects repeatedly. Let's look more closely at how to use EMEM Effects Memory, beginning with Learns. To learn an effect, first select the EMEM Pattern Enable push button so that it lights. Then select the Learn push button. Now select EMEM Register Number 1. This will store the current panel selections, including all push buttons, all controls, and transition rates into that storage register for later recall. Even panel selections which are not visible will be learned, such as matte colors and white border width and softness. To recall an effect, just select any of the 10 EMEM Effects Memory push buttons, which contain a previously stored panel state. EMEM learns the panel setup, not the video and key signals coming into the switcher. So when you recall an effect, you need to cue the video and key inputs manually or use an editing system. The EMEM system stores all automatic transitions, DSK mix, and or fade to black events, along with an effect. When the effect is recalled, the automatic transition will also occur. To learn an effect with transitions, first select the EMEM Register push button so that it lights. Then select the Learn push button. Make sure the transition rate is the rate you want. Now select any one or a combination of the 3 automatic transition push buttons. As they are selected, the push buttons will light, but a transition will not occur. If you decide not to learn a transition, you can cancel it by pressing the transition push button again. Once you're satisfied with your transition selections, select one of the 10 EMEM Register push buttons. The current switcher effect and the selected automatic transitions will be learned into the register. The procedure for recalling an effect is the same as for any other learned effect. During the recall, the learned switcher state will be recalled, and then the automatic transitions will take place. Note that the positioner Last X push button becomes Last X when the EMEM mode is active. Pressing Last X will cause the switcher to return to the state it was in prior to the last EMEM recall. Last X lets you recover quickly from an accidental EMEM recall. If you have an editing system that is capable of controlling EMEM functions, you can use the editor to access the upper 6 registers that are not available via the control panel. Note that the EMEM Effects Memory registers are backed up by a battery to protect against loss of data. If you want more permanent EMEM storage, many editing systems can read and store EMEM data on a disk. When an EMEM register is recalled, some knobs on the Model 110 control panel may not agree with the electrical value or position of those controls. Recalls can change the control voltage for each function, but of course cannot physically turn the knob. Therefore, as you turn a knob, the range of the control may be offset so that the control does not seem to respond over its full range. To remove any offset and make the electrical position of a control catch up to or agree with its physical position, just turn the knob until it reaches a limit. The electrical position will then change to agree with the physical position. The Model 110 can be controlled from an editing system using serial controls and general-purpose interfaces. The serial interface function allows a computer editor or other serial controller to remotely control the Model 110 switcher. Serial communication with the switcher by an editor through the serial interface is enabled when the Editor Enable push button on the Model 110 panel is lit and disabled when it's off. For specific information on how to control the Model 110 switcher using an editor and the serial interface, refer to the documentation of your particular editing system. Or if you want to program your own computer to serve as an editor, request a copy of GVG's Model 110 Serial Protocol Manual. The General Purpose Interface, GPI, also allows you to activate switcher transitions by remote control. The Editor Enable push button in the Auto Transition Rate Control Group must be turned on to allow use of the GPI functions. The Model 110 CV chroma keyer uses switcher primary inputs selected on the key bus as sources. Note that the key link feature doesn't work in the chroma key mode in this model. But the Model 110 CV does have special chroma key features. They are background color suppression, BCS, and cancellation, BCC. In some chroma keys, the blue or green backing color spills forward onto the foreground object, creating an undesirable blue or green halo. The chroma keyer on the Model 110 CV includes circuitry and controls which allow you to remove some or all of this halo and replace it with a complementary color which can be adjusted to approximately match the natural colors that occur in the chroma key scene. The result is a cleaner, more natural-looking key. When the chroma key push button is held down, the chroma and luminance controls are delegated to control the background color suppression and background color cancellation, respectively. The matte background settings are not changed. You may need to adjust the clip, gain, BCS, and BCC settings several times to achieve the best key. When you are pleased with the results, release the chroma key push button. As we come to the end of this program, you should now have a better understanding of just how versatile, powerful, and easy to operate the Grass Valley Group Model 110 compact switcher really is. If there is still confusion about a particular operating procedure, may we suggest that you view the program again or refer to the Model 110 Operator's Handbook for clarification. Grass Valley Group's focus has always been to provide the very best television equipment and the best customer support possible. The Model 110 switcher and this operations video program are a reflection of this commitment.